Here in Lagos was thick with the promise of rain and the sweet, dizzying scent of power. It clung to the white linen of Alhaja Eniola Salami's buba and iro, a scent far more potent than the rosewater she favored. To the people, she was Ye Omo Luwabi, the matriarch of the good people, a philanthropist who built schools and sponsored pilgrimages. Her portraits, benign and radiant, hung in the governor's office and the humblest kiosks. This was her facade, meticulously woven. But beneath the silk, the pulse, and the public adoration, Eniola Salami was the king of boys. Not a king, but the king. She commanded a sprawling, shadowy empire that controlled everything from the docks to the street tolls, the movement of untaxed fuel to the outcome of local elections. Her will was the unwritten law in the city's dark corners, enforced by men whose loyalty was bought with fear and gold. Eniola's hunger was not sated by the shadows. She wanted the light, the legitimacy, the impenetrable shield of the state. Her ambition was a relentless drumbeat, the Senate. To move from controlling the players to becoming the game master herself. Legitimacy is the last fortress. Salami, her longtime consigliere, Chief Kazim, a man whose face was an impenetrable map of old scars, had warned her. The moment you enter the light, every shadow you cast will be scrutinized. Eniola had only smiled, a slow, predatory curve of her lips. Then we ensure the light only shows what I allow, Chief. I have always preferred to operate in plain sight. Her campaign was a dazzling spectacle of wealth and populism. She outspent, outcharmed, and outpromised her rivals, who quickly found their own funding mysteriously drying up, their rallies plagued by accidental mishaps, their public sins whispered onto the front pages. Her chief rival, the incumbent senator, was a man of old Lagos money. He tried to fight her on ethics. How can a woman of unknown origin and business stand for the people? He demanded in a televised debate. Eniola leaned into the microphone, her gaze a steady laser. I stand for the people because, unlike you, I have lived their struggle. The people do not need a history book, Senator, they need a future. And I am building it. The crowds roared their approval. The political battle was won. The Senate seat, however, was not the end, it was the signal for the betrayal to begin. The moment she declared her political intent, it was a declaration that she was vacating the throne of the Underworld, if only temporarily. The vultures circled. The first challenge came from within her own ranks, Adibil Beona Adekono, a young, hyper-ambitious lieutenant who managed the network of street enforcers. Beona was sharp, brutal, and tired of kneeling. He saw Eniola's move as weakness, a matriarch abandoning her true family for a new, bloodless one. Beona began to seize territory, diverting tributes and stirring up small, controlled chaos to test Eniola's reaction. He used the very school she built to recruit new, younger thugs, painting her as an old lioness whose claws were clipped by politics. The next challenger was external, but intimately connected to the political world. Aisha, the widow of a rival Eniola had subtly, but completely, erased years ago. Aisha, a quiet, brilliant operator, had amassed a fortune in legitimate contracting and vowed to dismantle Eniola's empire brick by corrupt brick. She didn't want the throne, she wanted vengeance and justice, and she knew exactly where Eniola's bodies were buried, literally and metaphorically. The conflict became a terrifying, high-stakes game of chess played across the city. Beona struck first, orchestrating a brazen attack on one of Eniola's key collection points. He sent a clear message, I take what is yours. Eniola, dressed in a simple, severe white pantsuit, summoned him not to a dingy safe house, but to the lavish penthouse boardroom overlooking the glittering lagoon. Beona, she said, her voice soft, come. You seem to have forgotten the cost of ambition without permission. Beona was cocky. The streets speak a new name, Alhaja. They say the king of boys is now the queen of politicians. And politicians are weak. A beautiful sentiment, Eniola countered, sipping her chamomile tea. But the king of boys is a title earned, not taken. Do you know why I keep my own hands clean, Betrayal? Because my hands move the lever that drops yours into the fire. Within 48 hours, Betrayal's entire operation was crippled. Eniola didn't use her own thugs, she used the legitimate channels. She called in a favor with a high-ranking police commissioner, a man whose entire career she had funded, and a meticulous tip-off to the anti-graft agency that detailed Betrayal's exact location and financial transactions. Betrayal was arrested in a highly publicized raid, his legitimate front destroyed, his assets seized. His own street soldiers, seeing the impenetrable power of the state turn against him, melted away. But as one problem was solved, Aisha moved. She didn't seek the streets, she sought the truth. Aisha leaked a devastating trove of documents to an investigative journalist, proving a decade-old money laundering scheme tied directly to one of Eniola's philanthropic organizations. The scandal broke on the eve of the election. The legitimate facade cracked. Protest erupted. The police commissioner she used against Betrayal was forced to resign, leaving Eniola exposed. Her political campaign stalled. Eniola Salami stood at the edge of the precipice. Her ambition had brought her to a power struggle that threatened to consume everything, the empire of shadows and the kingdom of light. In her lavish bedroom, she looked at her reflection, the serene face of the philanthropist, but in her eyes, the cold, diamond-hard gaze of the king of boys. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't kill Aisha directly, that would confirm every accusation. She couldn't allow the investigation to proceed, that would lead to total collapse. She picked up the phone. She didn't call Chief Kazim, her trusted strongman. She called the investigative journalist who had just written the career-ending piece. "I have a story for you," she whispered into the receiver. "A bigger one. About Aisha. A story of international espionage and treason. A distraction so large, the country will forget about my schools by morning." The king of boys was not a political strategist, or a businesswoman, or even a criminal. She was a survivor. And as the lights of Lagos twinkled outside her window, Alhaja Eniola Salami knew she would burn the whole city down if it meant sitting on her throne, whichever one she chose. The ambition had a cost, but she was always willing to pay it, and ensure the change was in a currency her enemies could not afford.